Okay, any questions before we get started? Okay, so Silas was letting me know this is really an ever-changing organizational chart. And that's because we're getting ready to just hire even more additional folks to help us in practice. But I wasn't sure if several of you, you work and you're integrated into the day center, but do you really know how you're surrounded by other clinics and how you came about? So I thought that was good for you to understand the history. And so highlighting here, I know that Silas has a really strong portion of our FQHC because you're an FQHC clinic, federally qualified health center. And that was derived from a huge grant that was put together through HRSA. And I think it's important just to understand that although that's a big part of it, it's a co-agreement with ETSU. So those two entities are very important with the oversight of your clinic. So that's how we partner together to make sure that you all have the tools and resources on a daily basis. So if you start with the College of Nursing, you have so many departments, and practice is one of them, which is where the College of Nursing clinics fall under. But there's also, you may hear, of course, academics, you have undergraduate and you have graduate programs. You also have student services, Office of Student Services. They really work with the students to make sure that they have advice and support. But practice is where the clinical aspect is. And then you have research. So when you have the whole College of Nursing, you're under the Department of Practice. So I didn't know if everyone was aware of that. With that said, then that's where I come in as your associate dean, because I'm responsible for practice. And then Silas supports, we work together to support all of the clinics. We have them color coded, and you're right here in this pretty turquoise because we have, let's see, is that JCDDC, where you have the pharmacy, dental, and then the actual clinic. And then you have University Health, Mountain City, and then the day center, and then you have Hancock. So there's a total of 7 nursing clinics that you're part of. So you're one of those 7. Any questions about the organizational part? Were you following? Okay. So of course there are several roles in those. I didn't know, Silas, if you wanted to add anything that I may have missed that's important to share. You've got the board.
Yeah, I just want to touch real quick on this. So up here we've got, as Roz mentioned, the College of Nursing for ETSU. And then over here, we get confused sometimes because we have to call it the Northeast Tennessee Community Health Centers, Inc. And that's because it's a separate entity than ETSU, but we function as ETSU clinics. And so that's why everybody's ETSU employees. And so that's our governing board entity. And so as a federally qualified health center, or FQHC, we're designated as an FQHC by funding that we receive from HRSA, which is the Health Resources and Services Administration. And so that's a grant that we apply for every 3 years. It used to be every 5 years. Now they've changed it to every 3 years. And actually, because of COVID, we got a 1-year extension. So it's 4 years this time. But with that funding, that's about $2 million. So about a third of our budget comes from the HRSA funding. And that funding that we receive, that grant application that we submit, designates us as a federally qualified health center. So that funding that we receive, we use that to provide sliding fee scale for our patients. That's how we offset the cost, is through some of that funding. And then there are other requirements of an FQHC that we have to meet as well, including having a governing board. And the governing board has to be a community governing board, and it has to include patients on that governing board. So it has to have over 50% of the governing board participants or members have to be patients of the FQHC. They can be medical, they can be dental, they can be pharmacy, they could be behavioral health, but they have to be patients of the FQHC within. And when HRSA checks that, they check that sporadically. Those governing board members have to have had a visit within the last 2 years. So that's what they consider a patient. And so the governing board has responsibility for oversight of the FQHC portion of the clinics. And they have governance, they set the hours, they set the services, or they approve them, they approve the sliding fee, they approve a lot of those things. And then this co-applicant agreement is a 15-page MOU between the governing board and ETSU that helps spell out who's responsible for what. Because in a standalone FQHC, not one that is associated with the university, you wouldn't have any of this. You would just have the governing board, then the CEO or executive director, and then your clinical staff. And so we're a little bit complicated because we're called a co-applicant agreement. How we fall under with HRSA and our funding. So.
And I know that's a lot of entities, but I think the most important item out of here is that when and if you're working each day in your clinic as you move forward, and whether it's your new leader or your current interim leader, if there's any issues that you feel you're not satisfied with, or you need to just get advice from, that's when you're wanting to reach out to Silas or myself, because we can give you guidance on next steps. I think that was there was a line drawn in the sand that wasn't happening. And we have found that there's so many things that we needed to have addressed at the clinic. We thought we would just list the 7 federally, the 4 under the total clinics is 7, but 4 of them is the federally qualified. And that's the JCDDC, the one that is across from the medical center, of course, your day center, and then the 2 in Hancock. There's an elementary and a high school. And then you have a rural health clinic up in Mountain City, if you've never been up there. And then you have the 2 on campus, University Health Center, which really backs into this building here, and then University School. University School is more of a nurse first aid clinic. We don't have a provider there, but we still support the students of that from grade 1 to 12. We thought we would just give you pictures of the JCDDC if you haven't been able to visit. Of course, that's your day center. That's the Hancock Elementary Clinic. If you've never been in Hancock. That's the Hancock Middle High School. That clinic is within and then that's Mountain City. And that's another pretty drive to get to kind of go along the river. Neil's been involved. He's like, yeah.
So just to clarify, because that looks like a huge facility. That's the Johnson Memorial Hospital or Johnson County Hospital up in Mountain City. And our
clinic is just in the corner.
Yeah, it's located on the side. So, it's still a smaller facility. 1 to 2 providers on a daily basis, but it's located inside the hospital.
And then University Health is right here in Nick's Hall. And then you have University School, which sits inside of the clinic. Okay. So now just giving you some insight of how you're a part of a larger entity, but you're just as important as any other clinic. We thought because there's so many things that are changing at the day center that we talk about that. Like I said, in our huddles, we've highlighted certain aspects of it, but prior to Silas and I working with you a little bit more closely, I'm not sure if you all knew how to schedule to say who was there that day, when they were going to be there, just giving you insight of some structure. So do you feel like the schedule has been beneficial for you? Amanda is putting it out for you weekly. And because our schedule is ever changing, we're trying to add so you'll know when we're there. but Silas introduced to you, even though you have that interruption throughout the week of our close proximity, starting August, he will be setting a certain time to visit the clinic, and then I will rotate in periodically. So I just want to make sure the schedule is not something we're just doing to do, that you feel like if there's things you want to see changed about it or add to it, this is your time to give us insight. So the next topic wanted to cover was the productivity schedule. So that's your actual schedule that's in centricity. And because we've been low in staff, we haven't really talked about what our goals are. And it's hard to really say what the goals will be. But what we do need to understand is they need to be greater than what they are today. So I'm sure everyone grasps that concept. Sure.
And the reason for that, I mean, I shared with you that we have the F2HC funding. And so, some people are like, well, we get a huge grant from HRSA. Why do we need, doesn't that float our productivity? Doesn't that, compensate for low productivity and stuff? Yes, it does to a certain degree. But even when we're productive and we have a patient that comes in, they have a $150 bill and they're on a sliding fee. And so they only pay, at the day center, a lot of them are homeless and, get their fees completely waived and they don't even have to pay the nominal fee. And so if you take that $150 bill and wipe it down to zero, then you can see that $2 million, when we have a $6 million budget for all of our clinics and all of our staff, doesn't cover it all. And so there does have to be an emphasis on productivity, an emphasis on revenue coming in, and maximizing all of those revenue resources so that we can continue to keep our doors open and provide these services for the lower income, uninsured, underinsured patients. We can't just do that on grant funding alone. So that's why the productivity has to be an emphasis.
And so the NCNS is no call, no show. That's one thing that I've identified the population is heavy. Of course, we have it throughout our clinics and we're always working on the percentages to improve, but this one is really high. And I think it's just because of the nature of folks not really being structured themselves, having a home, and they're just, they may show up and they may not for primary care and behavioral health services. So we have to evaluate how to make a change in that percentage with this population. And I know that Sarah and some of Nikki, you may have to make phone calls. Sometimes their phone works, sometimes they don't. To say, hey, are you really going to show up tomorrow? There's lots of mechanisms we can put in place, but the mechanisms we have at other clinics may not fit your clinic. So you have to help us understand what is the best way. So far, my thoughts are to double book. And I know that's a little scary when it comes to the providers because you feel like, what if two patients show up at the same time and then they're inconvenienced because they're having to wait? But I like to transition to that model and see how often that happens. If we feel like that begins to happen where we're inconveniencing patients, then we will make a change. But it's something that we have to think about before we do something like that. We want your buy-in, but that's the biggest way to put it in. So the next item is we recently changed case manager with putting it in a system where they could see, and when the new case manager on board, you have the opportunity to have 2 sets of schedules. How is that working? Is this something that you found beneficial? Too soon?
Yeah, because Sarah's upfront 100%.
And she's the only one.
I think Sarah, you can speak to, she really likes documenting the stuff in simplicity. But scheduling wise, it's way too early just because she doesn't have the time to do it right now.
And it's not a full,
Right.
yeah, case
Right.
schedule. Okay, that's fair.
I'm just trying to see people as I can and working with them. I'll put them on my schedule if I have time, free moments, or we have coverage. to allow me to meet with somebody, but it's really.
I
hard
think
right
it's
now.
gonna be, good. I think it'll be.
It's kind of evolved.
Yeah, putting it all in Centricity, it saves 100% of time. You're not having to, the way we were doing it before, we were either having to create a paper chart and putting that all together and making copies of things. Now we can just scan it in the computer, which that might be helpful to have. We were talking about getting scanners, scanner printers for our offices, because it would keep us from having to run up front and putting it in the Centricity up front. We could just do it ourselves. But we were scanning them into our computers and creating an electronic, just like a Word document on our desktop and creating folders for each client, trying to eliminate the paper that we were creating before. We had to print everything out. We were having to do templates and all this stuff for that. So it was a lot of handwriting stuff and it took a lot extra time. This time it's not. We can.
But now you have that in Centricity, and you need to put some upload to it or whatever everything's there.
And we could continue to do the paper part portion, but scan it into the chart and we can just label it like their psychosocial intake so that we still have that form on file showing when we did that with them. It'd just be a different form. Or I was talking to Janice about doing it on the computer.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Whatever you're wanting to scan, it needs to be uploaded. So you want to connect the dots there, not have separate files.
So as part of patient portal, eventually they're over here. That capability to send reminders and stuff like that.
A lot of help. So we do, everybody can see, like all the providers.
That's
can
what I
see
was
what
going
we're
to
working
add.
on.
Whatever you're uploading, whatever you're documenting, so if Meredith or Judy are looking at something, they can see it. That's the beauty of it.
We could put on there that we're advising them to come back like the next time we want them to follow up with us next week and they're not following up. They can tell them, hey, well, you follow up or at this time did you follow up? And they're not. Yeah, if they don't, then we can kind of help wrangle them back in.
Well, that's a structure, like you say, it has its advantages. There may be some slight disadvantages, but it's definitely more advantages. So when we're looking at continuing to evaluate client structure programs, this is where Silas and I need your help, because when you think of the day shelter and what that means, the objective, your clients are having the opportunity to come out of the weather, they get to clean up, they get to wash, and they get to kind of relax. And then they move on for their, what is Salvation Army or some of the other places that feed them during lunch. So with knowing the incidents that are occurring and the idle time, the situations that develop during that idle time, I'm trying not to lose what our objective is, but I also want to prevent and decrease those incidents. So we have to come together and determine what is that program going to look like. So I put in here, first of all, when we determine what it is, what that program is going to be, it's going to be a change to our population. So we have to determine as they're coming in, for the ones that are there every day or every other day, we have to pull them aside and we have to sit down and talk with them and say, hey, things have changed. Here's what the new day shelter is going to consist of. We have to tell them. So that's the first thing. Then we have to determine, to be able to do that with the amount of staffing, once you get fully staffed, do we allow 4 folks in, we manage all of their services and they leave, and then we rotate others in? That's one option. I'm just, throwing things out. Once they leave, they have to fully leave the parking lot. They can't be in the grass and the trees. They can go to the side, because once they're out of our property, we can't control what happens. But once they enter back, we don't want them idle. If they're finished for the day, they have to move on. But is that fair to them? Because we've created a day shelter where they are spending time. If they're doing something productive, that's fine. But then you have your mental health population that may not connect the dots and may not be able to function in the structure program. So our goal is, I gotta keep you safe as an employee. I want to have services for a population that we support. And we want to reduce incidents because Officer Patton and you as employees, you don't want to have these issues every day. Thank goodness we're going to have him full time. But still, he has a lot of weight on his shoulders. We don't, we can prevent things. That's important. So I'm introducing concepts to you to diminish this so that you help us create what you want your new day center to look like.
We have not been at full capacity for over a year now.
For the COVID. Yeah.
We're still limiting numbers.
Right.
So once we get back to full capacity, if we're having the incidents that we're having on a daily basis, multiple times a day, we're not at full capacity right now. So I think that's something that we need to keep at the forefront.
And that's why I'm bringing it up, because we have to control our day. The population, we know that they need us, but that doesn't mean anything to me if I'm going to have chaos. What's the purpose? So we have to control our day to fully service our clients. And then I've got Silas who keeps me straight about, okay, this is what federally qualified health centers do and what we're required to do to meet that person requirement. So I've got all angles coming at me, but I just want to create a model that is workable. Reducing incidents, fully servicing the client. If they showered and they had a snack, they checked their mail, whatever they're doing, and they're moving on, they need to move on. We have to control our destiny. Uh-huh.
We talked about this activity. Most of the guys are coming there at the day center. They are coming there from taking shower to start to hang out. At some point, they don't want to sit there and watch a movie or maybe watch TV, you know. So how do you take a shower, check their meal, and they don't want to go anywhere, you just start to sit at the day center, then you ask them to leave, or you know, they don't want to understand how
do you handle that? And that's the whole goal, because let's say if you're rotating 7 in at a time and 3 of them have additional services, primary care, behavioral health, case management, they're fully serviced. But if you have 2 out of the 7 that are just wanting to watch TV, you could say after an hour, we're going to have to rotate others in. You have a great day. Do you need a list for housing? Do you need a list for, whatever they need? And then we have to move them on. We have to control our destiny.
The education, the extra stuff to kind of help them, because a lot of them just don't know. We've had quite a few of our patrons that just don't understand what sick that is. They don't know the mechanics behind it. What
Communication skills.
Yeah.
Sort of communication.
I think there's all kinds of programs that we can develop. Because yeah, sure, we want people to be able to come in and relax,
Yeah.
especially when it's cold outside or hot outside.
Yeah.
When the weather is raining, or something like that, they have other places to go, and they don't have anywhere that they can go and feel safe and just relax and let their guard down. And, we want to provide that for them, but at the same time, like we want to provide. Our goal is to help these people, to help them, transition, to not being homeless if we're able, and to do whatever we can there. And so how do we structure, recreation time or your downtime, but then how do we structure that with, some of these programs that you're talking about, rather than just, turn on a movie and letting them sit there all day, So.
Or idle, to where they start thinking of trouble and how to see something and they feel it and run, and it causes all of these things.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and switched to the next slide because I knew introducing that concept to you would create where we needed to have brainstorm. And it's listing the type of programs you want, how long will it take to create it, who would actually perform that program. And right now, I know that you don't know the total staff at the day center, but we have a BSW student coming. We've got Rochelle, we've got others, Franklin. We've got plenty of folks to help us do that. But right now, I know the productivity is priority. But once we're able to, that's where the schedule is going to benefit us, because on each day, you will know that, let's say if Nikki says, hey, I'm going to do this particular training, so someone cover me at the desk, and Amanda scheduled that, or, you know, whatever, whoever's performing Meredith, and she's blocked for 3 hours for that day. It's really identifying what programs you want to have and then implement. So recovery programs is huge because there's so much substance abuse. And sometimes if you don't take care of that first, programs mean nothing to them. So we have to think, keep that at the forefront also. But I put brainstorming that we could, I know Amy's there, she's taking notes for me, but if you all, are there things you would like to see that we can have resources to create? C.O.N visited, we can bring in other folks to help us, because they have great programs we could go and observe their hour training. C.O.N is the Knoxville Area Rescue Mission who deals with the homeless in Knoxville. You know, we talk about our population and our clients, but what we've also learned through being a little bit more closely connected to you is that you all also have a lot of ways that you're carrying each day servicing these clients and patients. So you also need that therapy. And so whatever that is, you know, again, we want to provide the resources and support for you when it comes to managing your day. I think after we make a list, if you can do this for me based on what we had talked about, is send some of the groups programs that you would like to see. We can compile the list, then determine how often should they occur on a weekly basis so that we incorporate them into a daily schedule. So say if there's 2 groups a day, 1 group a day, whatever is realistic. And then we start looking at who's going to perform that group or program and see how it goes. Trial and error, because some of the groups and programs may be terrible. The patients or clients may say, what is this? This ain't working for me. But then others they may love and we'll do it more often. So that's kind of what we're trying to achieve.
Another in the past, when you contacted the VA with the program where they went through the steps, those that were people that they got injured. So they had to meet all of the criteria to get there. And then they had job interviews. Yeah. And you know, it was that total incentive that you have to get first before you get these services. We definitely have to do that. The structure. Yeah. Sorry, that's all in here.
Great idea. Great idea.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, gear it towards something they really want. You really want housing, go here, go through these steps to get you the housing, and we'll prepare you. So, again, we are.
Yeah.
Real life living. They're all good, you know?
No, for your sake, I hope not. I just enjoy listening to the creativity of the minds at work here. Is that, you know, if you can see the synapses flowing around the room here, they're just snapping back and forth to come up with great ideas and thoughts. And I think that's wonderful. For those of you that don't know me or what I do, which is a lot of people in the College of Nursing, haven't quite figured it out yet, but I've been around for quite a number of years. And I started working at the College of Nursing years ago when I was with Human Resources here at ETSU. So that's where I started with HR. And I kind of evolved from, I was the training manager for the employee training manager. And some of you may have seen me at some workshops that I've done. I did get out to some clinics, but not all of them, but several of them during that period of time. And really enjoyed that line of work. And so what I'm doing now for the College of Nursing is a little piece of that. even though I'm no longer with HR, but when I was there, I was also doing employee relations, which is kind of sounds like, oh, that's a really good thing because you're going to really help employees and whatnot, but that just comes down to discipline. And that's not always so much fun. But what was interesting is it was a great education for me because some of the discipline that I did, in fact, a great deal of the discipline issues that I had to deal with were with health practitioners, providers who were unable to provide not technically good quality care, but good customer service. Either they were having problems with patients and their behavior with patients, or they were having problems with each other. And that typically was the biggest problem, was how they treated each other. And that absorbed probably a good 50% of my time in employee relations with healthcare. They say that healthcare is one of the areas that has the greatest problem with civility in all industry and work areas, the other being higher education. So we kind of have like this wonderful mix of the two at ETSU, and it plays out, unfortunately. I have met some of the most wonderful people I've known in my lifetime here at ETSU, and then I have met some incorrigible people who are no longer here. And it's been a good thing that they've moved on to someplace else because we just really have some problems. There's a lot of stress in higher ed. There's a lot of stress in healthcare. Healthcare probably being the more stressful area. And I did not know much about the day center. It was nice when Roz invited me to participate, and I got to come down there. Yes, I've dropped off pizza. I've done other little things like that. Here's some balloons. Yay, I'm gone. But to actually come down there and spend a little bit of time with you, and of course, my plan is to come down each week and spend time with you to get to know you better. And let me back up and go back to my job at the College of Nursing. My title officially is Special Assistant for College Affairs, which is a title that actually Dr. Nolan came up with because it's a highly designed title to obfuscate anything that I actually do. It doesn't mean necessarily anything, it's just a title. But what I really do is I'm here for you. I am here primarily for employees, not for student services. We have an OSS office for that, as Ross mentioned earlier. But my job is really to help keep my eye on, be available to all of our employees. And that covers all of our clinics and all of our academic side. And I'm here, I have a phone. My phone number is available to anybody, and they can call 24/7. I have had people call when they've lost a loved one. I have had people call when they have been injured and fallen and they're in the hospital. I have had people call when they're so discouraged and down in the dumps that you just need somebody to talk to. We give in healthcare and in education so much to our students and so much to our patients all the time. We are constantly giving and giving and giving. It's like being in ministry in a sense. You're constantly giving to your parishioners, but who's giving anything to you? And so you go home and you expect, oh, I'm going to have a sympathetic ear when I get home. I'm going to be able to unload on my spouse or my kids or something. Or I have a good friend and I can talk to this person about it. But that doesn't always work so well either, because they may have their own load and burdens that they carry, and they don't want to hear all of yours. And they don't want to be in charge of decompressing you at the end of your day. And we felt that it was important to have somebody here in the College of Nursing who could be an ear, who could listen. So I guess you could say I was sort of the chief listening officer for the College of Nursing. But it's hard to break through personal pride, because we so often don't want to share anything with anybody to let you know that you might think of me as being less than I am. If I have to talk to you about a problem, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I am a listener. And I have, my history is being a school principal, being in ministry, and being a financial officer. And in every single one of those areas, of my life's history, I have had to do a lot of listening and listen to people's business. And that's fine. One of the important aspects of my job is confidentiality. You all know I've been through the HIPAA training, and mine is the same thing. I mean, I'm not talking about people. Well, I am in some senses because people talk to me about their medical issues and what they're struggling with and suffering with, and what they're going through, and why their job performance is where it's at, and what they think. And I don't talk to anybody about that. Even though my title in my job is under the dean's office for the College of Nursing, the dean doesn't hear about those things. The dean may give me assignments to do, and that's fine, and I report on those assignments, but I don't even tell her who I speak with. I wouldn't say, well, yeah, Roslyn, I spent an hour talking today, and she's upset because her flower garden isn't producing like it should be, or whatever. We don't have those conversations. So I just want you all to know that I'm here for that as well. That's my primary function. And I'm happy to speak with anybody. I'm happy to listen. I'm happy to cry with you if that's necessary, or I will laugh with you. As some of you who might know me a little bit better, I'm kind of an unconventional comic, so it's okay with that. I'm happy to bring cheer wherever I can. We're just talking about dress code first. I'm going to put that first because it doesn't take a lot of time to talk about that. Although I have had to create programs when I was with Human Resources, a training module or some departments, actually within the College of Nursing, who were having trouble with dress code. And interestingly enough, I thought, well, you go to work, you're in scrubs. Well, not everybody goes to work in scrubs. Other people wear different things. The front office staff, sometimes they have different, they can dress differently. And not every department within the College of Medicine has the same set of rules. And so you can go to one office and they dress a certain way. You go to another office, they dress a certain way, and they have a different set of standards. I was amazed when Ross sent me the dress code for this, and I got to page 7 and my tongue was hanging out. I went, oh, really? Oh, this is really something. I mean, we're down to, everything is covered in here except the distance between stitches in your hems, but it's all covered. I'm being facetious. Come on, folks, lighten up a little bit. This is not, but it's interesting because we have to cover a lot of different areas within our clinical area staff, different clinics, and when we come down to you folks in the day center, I noticed that one little tiny little box in the matrix that referred to y'all being able to wear blue jeans. Please, no rips and tears and stains, etc. Just good quality blue jeans when you come in here, because the work that you do sometimes requires you to get literally down and dirty on a given day, and even scrubs may not be tough enough for that, or they may not be fit properly enough for that. And so you just, I get it. And I don't think as far as what you're wearing at work, it needs to be defined that much. Some of our providers that come in wear the white coat, and I see that talked about in here. And of course, everybody knows about white coat syndrome. And we have that issue probably maybe more prevalent. I mean, I know that Derek, you have issues being in uniform. There's a reason for that. It's a reason of intimidation, presenting authority, and all the things that are necessary there. If you came dressed like I am today, they just go, huh. But when they see you, there's a presence there, and that is important. So the uniform can serve a function. Even scrubs serve a function. They differentiate you from somebody else and the services that you provide. If you're sitting there talking to somebody about housing, etc., being in scrubs, what would be, that's not the message that you're trying to portray. It might be convenient to wear that, but it may be something that we need to think about how we dress as per our job and as to the message that we're communicating. That's really critical in how we come. We understand that our patient base, our community that we serve isn't really high on hygiene and style. But that doesn't mean that we have to allow ourselves to be lax in the way we present ourselves at work. We talked about training. We talked about motivational experiences for our patients and our community, teaching different classes and etc. Well, we're modeling all the time. So everything that we do in there, we model to them. I've been impressed in the little bit that I have been with you. I don't know how else to say it except how wonderful I have seen you all behave with very difficult and challenging people. I've not seen very much. I know that sometimes the ruckus starts before the doors ever open, and it just kind of trickles along throughout the course of the day, and you still have to be there to provide that consistent service. And we'll talk about that when we talk about professionalism. I think, especially during COVID, when we were all masked up, we're all covered up, and who even knew? I mean, some of you, I hardly know you. I came in here this morning, like, oh yeah, that's so and so. I can tell because of the hair, or I can tell because of something else. But I haven't seen your smiling face, and it's just nice to see that. I think we're all very happy to be able to see each other's smiles, not just in our eyes. Although I hope that we've all learned how to smile with our eyes. That's a great skill to have because you can communicate a lot. And there's a lot of cultures in the world where you only see eyes in some people, and that's the case for men and for women in some cultures. So it's just an interesting thing that we have this experience where this is what we see. And this is the window to our personalities is our eyes. But I think that if we are groomed, if our hair is nice. Now, Derek and I, we've got it going on. Well, even Franklin, we know how to keep it groomed. If you all want to join us in this kind of a hairstyle, perfectly okay with me. But it is interesting. I mean, I know that in some areas, even in some of our high-end offices in the College of Medicine, I had to talk to people about coming to work with your hair wet. Something that simple, the ladies are coming in with their hair and they just let it dry over the course of the day. Well, I can understand if you've got 3 kids at home, you're trying to get them into school, trying to get your hair washed, you're trying to get all those, trying to get out the door and get to work. And that's the last thing you want to do is sit there with a blow dryer and work on your hair for 20 minutes trying to get yourself ready to go. But there's other ways that that we can take care of those kinds of issues. And I think that's probably one of the only things that we would see. And of course, scrubs, it's like going to a restaurant. Have you ever been in a restaurant and you see wait staff with dirty aprons? How does that make you feel about the food service and the quality of the food? I mean, horrible. I've seen some of the worst. And then you look and you see kitchen staff come out, or the chef maybe wanders out, and he wanders out with yesterday, maybe today's food, I don't know, on his clothes. So we want to keep our apparel, whatever it may be, however we're wearing, neat, trimmed, ironed if necessary, and certainly clean and tidy. Wearing something that's 4 sizes too big, I can see that we might hand out. I was watching one of our gentlemen that was in with a walker the other day. Taking 20 minutes to load up his walker with all of his earthly possessions to go down, and getting on a new pair of pants that he had gotten, and he carries a string with him that he laces in there to tie up his pants to keep them from falling off because they were so huge for him. Well, that was the only option that he had, maybe the only thing that was available, which is why it was nice that somebody mentioned that we need small size menswear down there. So I'm on the hunt always for that. And we'll bring them in as I can find them. But I think that's enough said about dress code, because we're a little bit different in the day center than we are in our other areas. But it can be a problem, and we do want to set the right tone for the people coming in. I have learned something and appreciate that Roz, when I saw her down at the clinic, was in scrubs. And also we just were casually talking about that. And she said, well, yeah, I take my jewelry off. I don't have that on down there. There's a certain amount of makeup, there's a certain amount of accoutrement that you may choose to put on your body that can be seen by other people that also might be envied by them, et cetera. And it might position you just by that as being a little bit better than they are. And so we pay attention to those things as well. But I think everybody here is tuned into that really, really well. And I'm glad for that. So all these 7 pages, I'll just put those aside. Yes.
Because we know we found out that the last time we did we're in the process of doing that. And then you all will receive the copy, but I think Amanda, you're welcome to print off a copy for everyone for the whole time. But it has 2 points in it, that like, your hair, your jewelry, there's lots of things in it that will really wrinkle clothes, just things you wouldn't think. So just take all of that.
And, the policy is there for a purpose, even though there are policies that exist in every department in ETSU Health. They are not necessarily adhered to properly. And nobody in this day of sensitivity wants to have it and address that issue, especially if the supervisor is male or female and they're speaking to somebody who is male or female that's not their gender, to address an issue of standards of dress and appearance at work is pretty rough. And so they would rather ignore it. In fact, I found that any type of discipline in ETSU is kind of handled that way. We would rather ignore it until it becomes so festered that we have no option but to face it. And I don't agree with that. Not my style, never has been. And I think as we move forward, I know that Roz and I have had many conversations over time since she's been here, and I think that we are on the same page with that. That we would rather be upfront. That's why mentioning the fact that we need to be open lines of communication with Silas and with Roz. You can talk to me too. And if it's something that you need to talk to me about in confidence, then we'll leave it there. I may generically address issues as I see it accumulate. For example, in the College of Nursing, if I have 20 people talking to me about the same issue, I'm going to package that in such a way that I can talk to the administrative team about addressing that, but without saying that so and so and so and so and so and so said such and such. That's not what we do. Let's talk about professionalism. Again, I want to come back to a compliment. I haven't seen unprofessional behavior in the little bit that I have visited with you in the day center. You're down to just 4 people on a regular basis down there. I know there's some GAs and some interns and some other people that are here working, and we have some faculty that come down to the day center. But I have only seen and heard from you because we've done individual interviews, and collectively, I'm just in awe at all of you for the work that you do. I say that really sincerely. I could not do what you do. And I think that I love people, and I don't say that I don't like you because you are different than me or you are less in your bank account than I have or more. I try to be an equal lover of all people. I think that unconditional love is an important quality, especially when we're in the people business, which you are all in. And unconditional love to me can mean something different to me than it might to you. But if you don't have that character, and I've seen that in some of you and heard that in your voices, that is what's required to do the jobs that you do. And I think I've talked to so many people about the day center since I've come in contact with you all down there, and just bragged on you and said what amazing things that you do. And you have that spirit in you. And that is what qualifies you to do the work that you do. Whether you are a social worker, whether you are a therapist, whether you are a nurse practitioner, however you are providing services to this community, we are going to assume that you have the qualifications for that. I'm not going to talk about that level of professionalism. I'm not going to talk about in-service training or continuing education or any of those things, because you all have to do that as part of growing. Although I will say this, and all of the reading that I have done on professionalism in healthcare indicates that you are always learning. You are always growing. You're in a field that is changing continuously. What you're doing today, you were not doing 2 years ago, 5 years ago. There are new things that have been added to that. And you have to be on top of it at all times, no matter what area of specialty that you have. And so that's important, and it goes without saying that you're going to be doing that type of learning. try every day to learn something new. If you get stuck into a routine, and down there you can get stuck in the danger that I see is you can get stuck with these people where they're at. You can get stuck in their world of problems, in their world of pain, in their world of need. And if we are there, and this is just my personal opinion, we can no longer be of excellent service to them. I have to be there for them, compassionately there for them, but I can't be in their world and still serve them any more than they serve each other out in the parking lot. That's an area of professionalism that we have to remember. And I think that maybe some of the problems that we've seen and that we see in healthcare is when the provider becomes so passionately involved with the care that they lose the separation that's necessary to be there to provide the quality care that you're not disassociated from them, but you have that separation where you can stand back and you can see this. You know the expression, forest and trees. It's just so true. You can become so buried in the, I don't know what other word to say, but the misery that some of these people live in, that we no longer can see the needs the way we have to see in order to provide that. So patients, I'm going to go over 9 little areas here with you. And patients come first. And everything that I've heard from all of you is exactly that. The patients do come first. And that's just amazing. You put yourselves second. You will work as hard as you possibly can. You will be there as long as you possibly can be there. You will take care of the needs as diligently as you are capable of doing. And I think that's wonderful. Understanding that there is a construct that is in professionalism. And I, not only from my reading, but just from the way I practice my professionalism, is that it has to be who you are. I can't take somebody who is unprofessional at the core value level and train you to become suddenly professional. You either have it or you don't. There are lots of jobs where it's not really necessary to be where you're at and to have the level of professionalism that you need to have. But I'm assuming that each of you has that level of professionalism, has that inner drive, that the attitude that you are innately, you just have it. I don't know any other way to say it other than that. And you place the job that you have above your own needs during the course of the day. And that's important. That the patient is more important than how you are feeling on that particular day. You're dealing with them compassionately from the moment they come in until the moment they leave the property. You are dealing with, when I used to teach classes in phones, you answer the telephone in the morning. When you get your first call, let's say you're in an office, doesn't matter where you are, where the first client or customer or patient calls, you answer, good morning, and you go through your little litany of who you are and where you work, and you're upbeat and your voice sounds, they can hear the smile in your voice, and you compare that to the call that you get at 4:35. There's a difference in the tone, there's a difference in everything, because you're checked out, you want to go home, you are done, but you were done at 12:30. But you still have 3 or 4 more hours to work, and you're tired, you're exhausted, your brain is muddled, and somebody's calling you at the last minute, and you're having to be the same as you were on that first phone call. That's just core customer service. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. And that's a hard thing to do, especially when you have a job that emotionally can drain you. And to be able to stay there. I think people who answer the phones and do customer service, people like, let's say you work for Whirlpool, and your job is to answer customer service inquiries about their broken down washing machine or there's something else appliance that they just got for you. And they are livid at any moment. Well, you can have those kind of people that walk into the day center. In fact, we know they come in and they're loaded and they're livid. And they're ready to do battle with you. Not because of you, but just because that's who they are and that's where they're at in their life. And so how do we show these people dignity and respect? That is so hard. And I'm going to guess that there are times in your day, every day, that somebody comes up to you that just pushes your buttons, that you just would like to throttle, that you'd like to pitch out the door and say you were never welcome in here again.
No, he kind of reminded me of Sarah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I said that, I saw smiles all around, complete, total unanimity in that. And we do. And yet, what do you do? And I think of Eric, I think of your work, where you have to physically engage some of these people. I couldn't do it.
Like it's worse than me.
Yeah, could not do it. And yet I have met in your soul a person who is capable of doing that. Whereas I couldn't take the job for 10 times the money and even come close to doing what you are capable of doing. And that's because it's who you are and it's how you're built. And each of you has a special gift in that area. And so, wow, dignity and respect is just really something. And I will learn by being there with you. And even at my age, I can still learn, but I will try. And we also have to be be aware of our limitations. It doesn't matter if you're the senior provider or you're just been hired to keep the showers clean. All of our jobs have places where we come up against limitations. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with acknowledging the fact that you have limitations and that you are going to speak to somebody about that. Doesn't matter if you're a health practitioner and you have a patient in the room and if you don't know something, you will say, I will find out. That's an interesting point, or that's a symptom that I'm not familiar with, or you just do that because that builds confidence in me. All of us have been to physicians or practitioners of the dark arts of medicine who pretended that they knew everything. And you come to find out post-service that they didn't know everything. And you found out by going to somebody else for a second opinion that there was actually another point of view. And so we have to be willing to do that. And I think that's important. Even, and again, dealing with our base, our service base. We would think, oh, they're not going to know, because I heard mention this morning when we were talking. We need to talk to them about meds, help them to understand, because they need to know some of these things. And yeah, they don't know this. Well, I don't know if we're talking about their IQs or lack of education or lack of world experience. Whatever they are, they're adults. And they need to be treated with respect as intelligent human beings and given the same courtesy that you would give to me if I was your patient or your client. No different. And given the same explanation. Now, if I go into a physician, and those of you who have medical training, you go to a physician, how do they talk to you? If they know who you are and they know what your experience is, or you say a few sentences and you interact with them, they are already making a judgment, aren't they, about where you are intellectually, experientially. And they will tell, a good physician will bring the level of conversation about your symptoms or whatever to the level that they feel that you're at. Others are just completely condescending and they just blow over you and they say stuff and they're out of there. But the ones that I have liked the most in my experience are those who understand who I am and what my experience is and speak to me at the level that I deserve to be addressed. On the other hand, if somebody comes in there who has no clue, why would they use giant 12-syllable words with them and go over all this stuff because they think they're being appropriate? Well, that's part of being professional, isn't it? Understanding where they're at and being able to speak to them so they understand something about what's going on with them. To give a pharmacological discussion to somebody about their medications, what point would that be? For some of them, they wouldn't understand a bit of it. But to give them a message that they can clearly understand in the terms that they can understand it. We all listen to ad nauseum, the ads for medications on television, where the ad is this long and the list of potential whatevers is this long. And we go, why am I listening to all of this? Well, because everybody listens to different things about those medications. Most of them just hear it's going to make me younger, beautiful, on the beach, in a flowing. And that's how I'm going to look and feel if I take this medication. And they miss everything else that's there. We just need to remember to be there for the patients come first, and we need to do that to maintain our composure at all times. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands for anybody that's had an episode with a patient where you lost it a little bit. But my guess is that at some point in time, you may have had that experience. I know as a school teacher, there's been times when I've lost it with a student or a parent over the years of doing that. When people came in to get financing and they were just telling me why I had to give them the money. So I was working in banking, and they were explaining to me how I was stupid and didn't understand. There was times when I just wanted to come across my desk and get real with them about that, but we can't do that. That would have been a really good way for me to terminate my employment with that organization. Observing patient privacy rules at all times. We all understand that. We don't need to have a HIPAA review. Like we're probably going to have that at some point later on anyway, but we get it. But there's a lot more about confidentiality than just talking about a patient's record. It's how we talk to each other about that patient, even though the patient may not be there. And there's some things that need to be said. There's some things that don't need to be said. Even though we need to be open with each other, but there's even things that when a patient is there about how we look, about people when patients are watching us, and I've just let somebody out, and I've taken them to the front window, and I roll my eyes as this person's going out, and that's caught by the patient, or I sigh like, oh, thank goodness this person is gone, and you give them to the billing person, they're out the door. I'm not saying this goes on at the day center, but I've seen it happen. I've observed it happen. I could spend the entire morning just telling you experiences that I've had in medical offices, as I'm sure each of you could as well. But observing that and understanding the truth and honesty are part of the treatment program. If we are treating the patients this way, they will do better. And we all know that, right? They will heal better. They will be more likely to take their medications and to be in it if they feel that they have been treated with respect all the way along the line. If the patient is happy, or the person that we're helping in the community can be made to have a moment of happiness, the chances of success go up. And it's just really important for us to be certain that we understand that. You know about leaving stuff out where they can see it, all these other issues that deal with HIPAA. I just don't want to go down that road with you any more than that. Being courteous and polite to everybody is the third area. Cultural sensitivity. You're dealing with a culture down there, unlike any of the other clinics. Yes, they may get some of that. In Hancock and other places, they may have some of those walk in the door. Not so much with our schools, but yes, it can be with our schools. I mean, they get kids that come to school with no food, no shoes, all kinds of things, and they have to treat that family and that child with the same dignity that we treat somebody who drives up in a Mercedes. It makes no difference. They have to have that level. But being culturally sensitive, and we're going to probably talk more about that, but religion and race and sexual orientation and ethnicity, all of these things when people come in. And of course, dealing with the homeless or the mentally ill, they have a culture of their own. It is completely different. It's like going back in the old days of the hobos and the train riders. They had an entire culture that they understood. They had a language that they understood. They had signals that they understood. It was a culture, and this is a culture. And we have to understand that it's not just a group of people who are messed up in life, but they have actually evolved in this culture. They may be second or third generation in that culture. And it's really something to understand that. So being there for them, introducing yourselves, doing all the same professional level things that you would do with a well-paying, well-insured, well-educated client. Greeting them, bringing them in, introducing yourself, making eye contact, having a what on your face. Well, with masks, it's a little hard, so we have the smiling eyes. Someday we may not have to necessarily have masks on at the front desk. I don't know when that all will change, but regardless of that, that same attitude. And where can you hear a smile? Yeah, you can hear a smile in your voice. Telephone skills. You know, you can tell if somebody's talking to you with a smile on their face while they're talking to you, or the smile's not on their face. So what it is with a mask. I can't see if you're smiling, but I can hear it in your tone. Accepting assignments without complaining. I know you're a little group. If you were in a big group like JCDDC, it's a bigger organization, a lot more people flowing about the building, and there's management down there, and if you're asked to do something and you think that it is beneath your station, what should you do?
Do it anyway.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, you do it anyway. And then one of the smile while you do it. You get it done, do it, and do it the best that you can possibly can. Is if that's your only assignment for the day. Yeah. Yes. That was my next comment exactly, because all of you will pick it up and get it done, regardless of where you are, whatever your job is. I know, one of the things I heard about Meredith too is, it doesn't make any difference who you are. You get out there and you get it done. You all get it done. You do what needs to be done. And you do it. You may complain inside because, oh no, he did that in the shower again. Oh. But and he didn't clean up after himself very well. So I now have to get in there and take care of it. And all of you, no matter what station it is that you have, you're taking care of business. And that is great. And I think that what we should do is we should say, okay, let's all model ourselves after the folks that work in the day center, because they are so good at multitasking and wearing whatever hat is necessary. And yet respecting each other for the task and the job that you're assigned to do. And that's critical. We don't all get to doing this and then suddenly we don't have any type of hierarchy or administrative responsibility. We still respect those, but we're all still willing to do it. Yeah, I know I heard stories on Roz when she went down there and her scrubbing. So I know wearing scrubs doesn't necessarily mean you have to scrub, but you still scrub. Yeah. Oh, I bet you would have. But that's good stuff. And that's the kind of thing that you need to celebrate with each other. And it's important. And don't let somebody that does that steps to the left or to the right and does something just outside of the parameters of their job description. Don't let that go unremarked and unnoticed, even though there may be only 4 or 5 of you in the building. Comment on that. Thank them. There's nothing worse than not being thanked for doing the job. And nothing worse than being asked to do a job without hearing the word please. Just same way you're going to do with your kids, same way you do any place else. Put those common courtesies at work with each other, because you need to hold each other up. You're there sustaining each other. You're holding each other's arms up throughout the course of the day. And it can be critical because we don't know what's going on in each of us. And for you to come along and make a nice comment or a polite statement can lift you out of a point that you're in right now that would make it difficult for you to make it through the day. Going above and beyond. That's always one of the things that I talk about when I talk about civility and professionalism, is going above and beyond the call of duty. You all do that on a daily basis, I believe. But don't ever stop letting that be in the forefront of your mind. In a lot of offices and a lot of businesses, and a lot of places on campus, that is not very good. In other words, that's not the way it's done. I'm a state employee. I am going to do the minimum necessary to get my job done. And I look at people like that I've had to work with over the years here at ETSU, and I just hold my head. And some of them were professors, tenured professors. I am where I'm at right now. I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to do what I do, and they let the chips fall where they make it. It's not going to bother me. And we have that attitude all the way through it. We can't have that attitude. And you can't, or you would fall apart down there in a split second. And we talked about learning, keeping yourself motivated to learn, to grow, to expand your thinking. That's important because it comes across with each other. If somebody has a particular position that's just a support position, and they think, oh, I don't need to grow. I don't need to learn anything new. I just need to learn this process and get that process done. But that's cutting yourself, you're selling yourself short, you're cutting yourself off from great opportunity. Continue to grow, continue to expand, continue to take training, do whatever you can, whatever we can afford you. And I'm sure that Silas and Roz would support anybody who wants to do training and get better at what they do, or even expand some of what they can do and cross-train in some areas where it's allowed by license and law. And we talked about professionalism in dress, and just a couple of other little things. Let's just talk about phones and email and that type of thing. This is across the board. And I see it every place I go. I walk in and somebody's is taking personal calls on their phone during the workday. That's just unacceptable. Across the just right up front. Unless you have a child or somebody at home that is very sick and you need to be available, you need to have a signal or something that you know that this is what's going on. And if you're in a situation where you can't take that call, you can't take that call. That's all there is to it. I have been in an exam room and had somebody get a phone call and go, oh my wife, that's a second, and step out in the hallway. And I can hear them. And I get on the phone in the hallway, then they come back in. I thought that provided me with some separation. I just sat there and I'm like, oh, maybe I should go and talk to the clinic manager and see if there's any way I could come in and offer some training, because this is awful. And you're the doctor, crying out loud. My worst was when they came in, they saw me, they went back out in the hallway, and I heard him on the phone, and he was talking to one of his buddies about every stroke in an 18-hole golf game that they had played. And I sat there for 30 minutes while this conversation went on in the hallway. I finally got up, put my clothes back on, and walked out in the hallway, looked at it, the doctor was still on his cell phone. And the nurse came after me and said, oh, what's going on? What do you? I said, I will not seek any service at this orthopedic office ever again. That was it. I was done. And how many people do people tell about bad experiences in any business? And that's one of the things that we're working to overcome in our clinics at large. The face that we present to the community needs to be 5-star at all times. And maybe the day center doesn't get rated the same way some of our other clinics do, but nonetheless, that's our constant and everyday goal. And we can only do that through great customer satisfaction. And great customer satisfaction comes also because we are satisfied with each other. So part of professionalism isn't just the way we deal with our clients and our patients, it's how we deal with each other. If I am not giving you the same kindness and courtesy and the same compassion and the same patience that I give to everybody else, then it bleeds off into my quality of my service. And oftentimes the problems that we have at a clinic or any office is really an inter-office issue. It's how we deal with each other. And so with that, no phone calls, prearranged time, you get a break, you take your break, you make your calls, you look at your messages, that's the time to do it. You don't do personal emails while you're sitting there when there's other things that could be done. I realize that sometimes I've seen our student workers in the College of Nursing, they don't have any assignments, they have nothing to do. So what are they supposed to do? Well, they're studying. Well, good. study, if that's what you need to do. You have no other assignments to do. But when you do have an assignment, make sure that you're doing that and you're not on, I don't even know the names of all the social media things that are out there today, but you're not on any of those. Yeah, yes, please.
You know, it's interesting. I have made observations that it's important for college and I'm not to make so many. What's important to me is until we get the payment buttons in place, I think it's fine for you to have your mobile phone in your work to do. Not thinking this is more of the front end area. And of course, there is the whole business situation with your role. But as a working the front end, as Neil described, if we're on our phones, if we're doing something on the computer that is work related, that is something that we don't want to do. But until we get the payment buttons, I'm okay with the phone. Once the payment buttons are put in, we can determine, do we want to have the little memory, maybe have your phone here where you can, if you do have 6 hours. We can talk about what that looks like, but I have seen too much of that. And I don't think our clients sometimes go in on it because they're on their phone. But we want to tailor it where we do with professionalism and we do the things that we do.
And this just doesn't make any difference. I went and did a training for one of our departments several years ago, and the reason was because they didn't know how to deal with people who are on Pinterest and eBay all day long. You don't have time for that. I get it. I'm just using this as an example of inappropriate office decorum. It was just terrible, and the boss didn't know what to do with it. And how do I sit there and monitor all of this? Well, remember we talked about professionalism being integral to who you are? Oh, I'm a support staff. Oh, I'm getting $9.50 an hour. I don't really care. I don't have anything to do. I can get this done in 15 minutes. I spend 30 minutes on Pinterest. Those are just things that just continue to create a culture of unprofessionalism rather than just the opposite of what we're trying to do. And the last little item has, again, to do with interpersonal relationships at work, and that is gossip. Gossip comes in all kinds of forms. Gossip can come in the form of looks. I'm looking at you, and I glance over here, and I go, and even though she's not looking at me, her back's turned to me, but I'm communicating to you my feelings about her, and that speaks a lot. And you may agree with me or not agree with me. The worst thing, of course, is you go. But gossiping is verbal, it's visual, it's how we do our work, it's how we help somebody. I don't come to your aid because I'm not sure that I want to work with you, but I will come to somebody else's assistance. All that language that we put out there is read by everyone. We read our verbal cues are this big and our nonverbal cues are this big. People who are in the profession of caring for people are paying attention to nonverbal cues constantly. If you're not watching nonverbal cues, Derek and all the rest of you that are out there in the front, you miss all the fun. It happens, and there it goes, and it's out of control. But gossiping is just probably the number one problem in all of our offices at ETSU, across the board. And end of story. The worst thing, if we have talked about this in leadership over the years, if we could just click a switch and gossip stopped, suddenly the culture at ETSU would change in an instant if that was gone. But just bear that in mind. I know you don't have a lot of time to sit around and gossip with anybody, but remember that gossip comes in all forms of communication, and just to bear that in mind. Now, there is a lot that we could talk about professionalism. It's much more in depth. There's great studies that have been done. There's tremendous amount of good research and data that's out there. Studies have been done in almost every country of the world on professionalism because we all deal with this problem on a routine basis. But I will leave you with that thought today that I think that you guys are probably one of the best, most professional. What is there of you now in the, and I hope that as you go forward, you and Silas and Roz and all the rest of you go forward in the hiring process and bringing new people in, that you are hiring for quality, not because we need bodies in jobs, but hire to get the very best person that you can get in there and pay attention to all of these things because they have to fit professionally with you, personally with you. All those things have to work together. We can get a really greatly skilled person who would just blow up in the first 3 weeks. Or we can get a greatly skilled person who we really vetted and looked at and gotten a sense of, and they might be there for 13, 14, 15 years because they love what they're doing. And they have that innate professionalism that talks about the character and the attitude that is born inside of them. And those are the kind of people that we're looking for. And I'm just grateful that we have so many at the day center like that right now. So we'll just, what's the next thing that we need to do besides take a break,
Actually,
clear your minds of my cobwebs?